Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time on Doctor Who Classic, we finished up the Daleks' Master Plan with parts 9 through 12. What happened in those?
Oh, Lord. Well, after the disaster that was parts 5 through 8, it somewhat cohesively came back together, but never did deliver on the promise of 1 through 4. The Daleks are ultimately defeated, as is the guardian of the solar system, Mavic Chen, and it's such a mishmash. It's really hard to keep it all straight. I seriously do not understand why they thought they needed 12 episodes for that, because, again, the first 4 episodes seemed like it was laying out a treatise on World War II and all of the, not just it's the good guys versus the bad guys, but all of the subtle twists and turns, like with the Chinese and the Russians and perhaps, the underground resistance, and then it just went nowhere with that. So,
yeah.
It was confusing and extremely disappointing.
Yeah, we had Mavic Chen, who was asserting a little too much power, especially over the other council members, but eventually he tried to assert power over the Daleks, and then they just took him out. And we also had the Time Destructor.
Finally found out what the Time Destructor was.
Which is a device to rapidly age a planet, which, it's an interesting idea, but it was only used in the final episode, and
never revealed what it was until that time.
Right. And the Doctor activated it so that they could use it against the Daleks and try to get out of there. It started aging him, though, and it also aged Sarah Kingdom to death, and we lost her.
Yeah.
And yeah, Steven and the Doctor made it out. It's just Steven and the Doctor now. No Sarah, no Katarina, no nothing.
So one assumes that in today's episode or sometime today, we'll pick up a new companion along the way.
Yeah, I would assume so. I don't know.
Stephen and the Doctor don't seem to get along. I mean, this is even worse than Ian and the Doctor.
Yeah, like Ian and the Doctor always sort of had their differences, but after a few episodes, they came to an understanding with each other.
Yeah.
Stephen and the Doctor, Stephen does respect the Doctor and respects his opinions, and understands that he is sort of the leader of the gang, but the two of them don't really have a dynamic other than that. And it's really not much of a dynamic. So the other thing I was thinking too is that we might be gaining a new companion in this episode. It would also be very honestly hilarious if we lost Steven in this episode. And I was actually kind of thinking, like, what if we lost Steven and didn't gain a new companion, and then next episode it's just, the Doctor shows up somewhere and gets someone else. But that would be interesting if the Doctor sort of was on his own for just a little bit.
Again, I'm looking at the name of this serial, and it doesn't strike me, again, that it would be advantageous to pick up a companion from the Renaissance, or actually the Reformation. This is probably somewhere in the late 1500s, early 1600s. So, like Katarina, she would not comprehend any of the machinery or time travel or anything else. Now, see, that's why I think, at least, Vicky and Peter were good companions, because they were from the future, basically. And even Vicky was able to work with Ian and Barbara, because Ian and Barbara had finally figured out how this was all working. But to go back into the past and pick up somebody who literally wouldn't understand machinery, let alone a time machine, that seems a little strange.
Well, but then there's the fact that, we don't know when the second Doctor is going to pick up Jamie and Victoria, but I'm pretty sure Victoria is from Victorian times, and Jamie is a Highlander, so they, I think, are also sort of from the past. So we will get that, just maybe don't go as extreme as Katarina.
Well, now, I would understand Victorian, because by the Victorian time, see, the Industrial Revolution is early 1700s. 1730 is when we really begin to see things like the flying shuttle and the power loom and the powered mills, the water-powered mills and stuff like that. So as long as you understand the concept of machinery, it wouldn't be too hard, I would suspect, to then grasp the idea that in the future machinery will do greater things. But yeah, if Jamie's just a Highlander, if he's just a soldier, if he's from pre-industrial revolution, that's going to be interesting to see how that fits in. Yeah. But to get, again, somebody from the Renaissance where they don't even understand machinery yet, everything is still done by hand. There's literally no practical machinery that the people in France at this time would have understood.
Right, and of course this is all still going off of just what we know of the title. Yeah. I mean, who knows, I don't think we're to the point where there are no more pure historicals, so it's possible that this is another pure historical, but it could also be possible to bring in some sort of, like, someone from the future, maybe if they got lost, maybe not quite like the monk, but someone who maybe stumbles back in time and is picked up by the Doctor.
You want to talk about something that would have been fun, because we kind of saw this in the Doctor Who movie, or somewhere where wasn't the Master actually part of the Doctor's... He was in the TARDIS and he was somehow under control.
That was in Scream of the Shalka. Where he was... I don't fully remember. He was like an AI on the TARDIS or something. Like, his consciousness was on board the TARDIS.
But for me, it would be fun if the Doctor and the monk had to travel together for a couple of episodes, or a couple of serials even, because that way you'd have the competing visions of, here's what we should be doing. The Doctor says, we're going to land somewhere and we're going to observe, and the monk says, oh, but what if we were to change this, this, and this? And he goes, no, you can't do that, and smack him.
Yeah.
So that would be fun, but again, apparently that's not where the series was headed.
Yeah. So, I guess that's pretty much it. This episode is completely missing. We are in complete recon town today. However, the next episode is a 100% serial.
Yay!
So
the Ark.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you want to talk about a historical?
Noah's Ark.
Yeah,
that'd be hilarious.
Well, I'm assuming that means like an ark to another planet, or like in the movie 2012 where they're trying to save humankind from something. But I mean, seriously, can you imagine the Doctor landing with Noah?
Yeah. Well, we got to get 2 of every animal on this boat. It's like, I can get 2 of every species in the TARDIS, Yeah. This place is infinite. So, I guess that's pretty much that. We should go ahead and get started on this episode of Doctor Who. Here we go.
France, yes, most certainly.
Well, how do you know that?
Very good.
Date.
I thought I was going to say the smell.
Any idea of the date?
I was going to say, you just got here. You don't have to hide immediately.
Well, dressed the way they are, though.
The
reason, by the way, I said the smell, when the very first village we lived in France, the cows used to come down the street every day, and they would poop in the streets, and it would stay there for days.
Yeah. Smells like North Texas.
Yeah.
As a stranger to Paris, I think you'll have difficulty finding it.
So I've got to try. You see, I must find a man called Preslin.
I'm sorry, I don't know the name. Is anything wrong?
Doesn't sound familiar to me
I don't
either.
know.
Now, are these telesnaps? Because they don't look like the cutouts that we've been used to seeing.
Might be.
Thank you, Nicholas.
A pleasure.
Oh, new companion.
Just something I overheard, sir.
What?
Well, you see, I come from Massacre. And when they said it might happen again,
What's that?
they said it would happen again, and my father died there, sir.
Calm down, Gaston.
That word alone is enough to put every Huguenot in Paris on his guard.
I will go look for her.
You will not. You will wait here and report this to the abbot. It's your mistake. I'm sure he'll want to congratulate you himself.
But
Yeah, but
Very
to
well.
pull a Darth Vader, just choke the guy out.
And you?
What if the abbot is the monk?
I'm certain that it's only a matter of time. In fact, one of them may be bringing her back here now. Forgive me,
From
Father Abbot.
behind. The abbot looks a lot like the doctor.
Yes, he does.
The Kaligny.
I was thinking the same thing.
Fetch her tomorrow. Bring her to me.
Okay. Okay, that is part 1. Now, is that actually the abbot, or is that the doctor in disguise?
We don't know, but that would be a good twist that the doctor's already taken it over.
Because they've already... Now, the thing is, when the doctor first left the tavern, someone was following him, so it could actually be that it's just the abbot looks exactly like the doctor. That'd be weird, but maybe. So...
A lot of exposition here, but again, it's obviously a great story. And this is kind of odd. Been teaching history for 25 years, but here in the United States, I've never heard the French Protestants pronounced Huguenots before. It's always just been Huguenots. So it's interesting to hear the different pronunciation of that.
Yeah. Now, what was the event they were talking about that happened before, where they slaughtered all of them?
I can't remember. I thought I said Bassine, but there apparently was a Catholic slaughter of Protestants at this little town. And again, this particular period in European history is not my forte. I only vaguely remember what happened on St. Bartholomew's Day. So obviously this makes much more sense in a European setting, France and England especially. Again, England being a Protestant country would have been horrified by the slaughter of their brethren in France or anywhere else for that matter. So again, I would imagine this plays a much bigger role in English history than it does here in American history.
Yeah. Now it's also interesting, again, this being just the Doctor and Stephen. I have said before, because in modern Doctor Who, the Doctor almost never takes a male companion. It's always a young woman that he takes with him. The most is like, you remember in The Doctor's Wife, he had Amy and Rory.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the most he's done for taking a male companion.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of wondered, like, what would the dynamic be like of the Doctor and just a male companion? And so we slightly get that here. Very slightly, but then obviously they get separated because that always seems to happen. And I suppose Stephen hasn't been kidnapped, but he's not back at the TARDIS or where the Doctor left him. Yeah. So,
but then neither is the Doctor. So
that's true. I guess the Doctor's somewhere. Maybe he's the abbot. Maybe the abbot just looks like him. I don't know.
You would think in the tavern when the Doctor was there, the Doctor did go to the tavern, didn't he? Yeah, he was there for a few minutes.
Yeah.
You would think someone would have recognized him.
Right.
Because if he were the, abbot, the Catholic archenemy of the Huguenots there, somebody would have said, my God, that man looks like the abbot. So
yeah. Well, because even I think Simon, who I think is like working for the abbot or something, I think he was there when the Doctor and Stephen arrived. So, maybe it... I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe it's that they just never have seen the abbot, or he just arrived, as this sort of, working for the cardinal in Rome. So maybe he just arrived and the Doctor just knocked him out and took the clothes. Like, I guess I'm the abbot now. So if that's the case, I'm not quite sure what the purpose of that is, though. Why would the Doctor do this?
Yeah, he certainly knows better than to alter history. So, I mean, we know the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre happened.
Yeah, so I don't know. This is an interesting sort of setup for this one. So
I'm wondering if we're going to meet the Queen Mother. She was, part of the. I don't specifically remember all the things, but I do know the Queen Mother was involved in the in the whole thing. So again, hopefully we'll see her here in one of these episodes.
Well,
Nicholas, you're the man's secretary. Now speak to De Coligny again. I'll tell what I can.
Now we must wait until we find out something more. Or for the Catholics to make a move.
Their move is likely to be a knife in Navarre's back.
Well, if nothing else, they're trying to save Navarre, because if I remember correctly, he will survive this.
There was a lost stranger who lodged at my house last night. I believe he was English.
And he brought you no word?
You are an extraordinary man, Tavan. You see shadows where there is no sun.
Nice.
Perhaps.
good line.
It is just possible that the doctor is pretending to be the abbot.
For what reason?
Where can I find the abbot?
So that you can get further instructions.
Nicholas, please believe me. I know nothing about Vassy or the Catholics or half of what you talk about. If the doctor is pretending to be the abbot, then it's for a very good reason. Please let me go to it. Should I find out that there is a plot of some kind, I'll come back and tell you.
You know, I hope that the Doctor is disguised as the abbot for no reason. He's just doing it to pass time.
Now, the next twist, of course, is Stephen looks like the assassin.
Nah,
My
yeah.
lord, tell him the sea beggar dies tomorrow.
Tomorrow? That order didn't come from Marshal Tavan. It came from the Queen Mother.
Oh, wow, that actually worked. Good job, Stephen.
Don't look like foils.
Nah.
See, that's a foil. That last shot looked like a saber.
Nah.
See?
I think it's because they get it, like,
Oh,
mid-motion, so you get the motion blur on it. This is always the most unfortunate part of the recon.
You, de Coligny, will go down to history as the sea beggar. The sea beggar. It's a title I'd be proud of.
So I do know that the Dutch Protestants tried to rebel against Spain, which is one of the things I think that helped set up the Spanish Armada coming against England, because Elizabeth, if I recall correctly, wanted to help out the Protestants in the Netherlands because she was afraid that the Spanish would come against them. So, I mean, it's very complicated. Again, this has been so long since I've done any of this. That's why it's very confusing to me. And I will say this one thing. We are suffering because so much of that episode, there was no dialogue. It was all, we're watching stills and, the occasional thing that would run by on the bottom. It's very hard to follow.
This is going to be a relatively easy edit because we only say like a couple things per episode. So, I also noticed here in the credits that William Hartnell is still credited, because he's credited for every episode as the main actor, but he's not credited as Doctor Who. He's credited as the Abbot specifically.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah. I wonder if I could just slightly take that. Yeah. Abbot of Amboise, William Hartnell. So I think that's the first time, because, in something like Mission to the Unknown, he's not in that episode at all. Yeah. But he's still credited because he's the lead actor. Whereas, despite the fact that both Stephen and Vicky were not credited in that episode, but he was. But here, he's just not credited as Doctor Who. So
that's interesting. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. Of course, it kind of feels like this is another week off for Hartnell, but he does still have that slight scene where he's there.
Which, again, he could have filmed ahead of time and then taken the week off.
Probably. So, which means, without the Doctor and without other companions, this has turned into the Stephen show, which is not where I thought we would go,
Yeah.
Do you mock me, Marshal?
Of course not, sire, but the war will have to be paid for. Some sacrifices will have to be made.
We will give away nothing of our land.
Besides, the bears there are French. They might not like to be sold.
Next winter you will accompany us on our hand.
Huge stretch with no dialogue. And nothing underneath to tell us what's happening. I mean,
The abbot is dead and they're blaming it on the Huguenots.
But he wasn't the abbot!
The king has summoned the council. I must return to the Louvre.
It'd be so crazy if it cut back and it was just Troughton. He just regenerated.
But he'll be revenged!
Pull that man! He's responsible!
After him, God! Catch him!
And that's part 3.
again, 25 minutes of film, maybe 10 minutes of dialogue, and the rest. And again, I'm sure this was fascinating and is fascinating if you can watch all of it, but watching it like this is just so incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, it's feeling like this could have been cut down. And I know, because we always, every time we say that, we get the comments saying that that's not how these were made, and I get that, but oh my gosh, like, two things happened in that episode. The Admiral got shot, which didn't kill him, he just got shot, and supposedly the Doctor is dead. I'm gonna find that hard to believe. Unless they're really playing the long game, and that actually was just the Abbot, and the Doctor's just gonna show up like, Stephen, what have you been doing all this time? I've been waiting for you at the TARDIS.
That may be, yeah. I was kind of thinking somewhere along that line that somehow or other he managed to get the real Abbot. You know, he was playing the Abbot, but then he got the real... again, that would all be, predicated on the fact that he and the Abbot actually do look alike. So
yeah, that... Which would be very strange to explain. Although, technically, if we go back to the Christmas episode... Wasn't there, like, after they left the film set, there was another guy that came in who, it was just William Hartnell again?
Yeah.
So, maybe there's precedent for that.
Yeah.
That'd be weird, but I don't know.
Well, I've seen some things lately. It's, modern day celebrities and their, historical doppelgangers. And, there are quite a few that, it is entirely possible that people throughout the ages do have people who look exactly like them.
Yeah. Well, this is also sort of brought up again later on Doctor Who, because before Peter Capaldi played the 12th Doctor, he actually had two different roles in Doctor Who stuff. He was a main character in season 3 of the Torchwood spinoff, and he was also in a one-off episode where he played a character in Pompeii. And so then later he became the Doctor, and they actually wrote that in that when he regenerated, he specifically chose that face. But I don't know if they are going to do anything like that here. So
yeah, it seems somewhat out of character for the 1960s. But
yeah,
but that actually happened to me once. Some guy came up and started talking to me, and I had absolutely no idea who he was. And after 30 seconds or so, the guy looked at me and said, "Aren't you so and so?" And I went, "No." And he goes, "You look exactly like him." And that was here in Oklahoma. And I've never met this guy, and so I have no idea. So, of course, I get those comparisons to George Lucas all the time because of the curly hair and the beard.
Didn't you get Stephen King one time?
Yes, when I don't have my glasses on and do the scowling.
Yeah,
I've had people when Mom and I were in Galveston last time. We went out to dinner. And apparently someone who is a Stephen King fan was our waitress. And at one point during the meal, she came over and said, "Pardon me for interrupting you, but are you Stephen King?" And I went, "No, but I do get that a lot." So,
Well, it's interesting because Stephen King doesn't have a beard.
Not anymore, but when he was younger, he did. If you go back and look at the stuff from like the late 80s and the early 90s, you remember he used to be a somewhat stockier guy, but he was out like riding his bike one day there in Maine where he lives, and he got hit by a car, and he nearly died. And so he lost a lot of weight, and he shaved off the beard and cut his hair and everything. So now he looks very different from the way he looked when he was much younger. So.
But the reason they want to kill the admiral is to prevent a war with Spain, right? Is that it?
I think so.
Because I've been trying to think, like, okay, well, wait, why are they killing the admiral? It's like, well, he does want to have the war with Spain, and they're against it. So I think that's it.
Again, another couple of minutes of no dialogue whatsoever.
Yeah. What happened to Breslin?
That's just thinking, where is he all this time?
Saw his body lying in the street by the abbot's house. Before I could do anything, Roger Colbert saw me and sent the guards after me again.
Man, he is just stuck there then.
Heaven knows what I'll do now.
Because he can't operate the TARDIS.
Make his way back to England and become a famous inventor.
Can't.
What is Stephen's last name, anyway?
I think it's Taylor.
Because Breslin is either dead or in prison.
He is not.
Doctor! The Catholics will not rest until you are dead.
You are too impetuous, Viscount. The king is determined to prevent a further attempt. Why else do you think he will so heavy a guard on this house?
You know,
A Catholic guard under a Catholic
with the doctor
command.
back, they could just leave and just let them do their thing.
He is under the Oh, my dear boy, had you stayed at the tavern, all this mix-up could have been avoided.
I did stay at the tavern. You didn't turn up.
Yes, well, I was unavoidably delayed. Never mind that now. Come along, let's go. Come along.
Calm down, monsieur. The curfew
We're
is
just out.
What?
Are you sure she'll be all right? The guards are waiting for her.
Dear Stephen, the Catholics will have other things on their minds tonight. She will be quite safe. Now then, you and I must leave Paris at once. Come.
Oh, Doctor, what is going on?
There is no time for me to explain. Come along, boy. Come along.
So the abbot was just the abbot then.
Apparently so.
This one's kind of weird.
Then you must get him out of Paris. After tomorrow, even I could not save him.
I will see to it, madame.
And Marshal, close the gates of the city now.
Cold-blooded massacre.
Well, good night, kids. Hope you enjoyed that.
What a terrible page at last. Did they all die?
Yes, most of them.
You just sent her back to her aunt's house where the guards were waiting to catch her. I tell you this much, Doctor. Wherever this machine of yours lands next, I'm getting off. If your researchers have so little regard for human life, then I want no part of it.
Even after all this time, he cannot understand. I dare not change the course of history. None of them could understand. Not even my little Susan. Or Vicky. But as for Barbara and Chesterton, they were all too impatient to get back to their own time. Perhaps I should go home. Back to my own planet. But I can't. Who are you?
Where's the telephone?
What did you say?
The telephone. I've got to ring up.
You've got to Take off.
Oh, so you come back, bad boy.
Yes, I've come back. We can't go into that now. There are 2 policemen coming over the common towards the TARDIS.
Coming here? Good gracious, they'll want to use the telephone off. Exactly that.
You just gonna take this girl?
She looks rather like my grandchild, Susan.
Again, I've never met your granddaughter.
Oh, no, of course not, no. Yes, but she does, you know. What is your name, child?
Dodo.
What?
Dorothea, really. Dorothea Chaplin.
Chaplin? God damn. It's not possible, is it? Chaplin and great.
Yes, it is possible, my boy. Very possible. Welcome aboard the TARDIS, Miss Dorothea Chaplin.
Dodo.
Oh, my dear.
Doctor Who's Adventures continue with the new story next Saturday at 5:15.
Oh.
Well, that took a turn at the end. I was kind of thinking, like, okay, you know, I can kind of see the point of this, you know, story where it's like, okay, we've got, you know, this basically leads to Stephen leaving the TARDIS in honestly a very different way than what we're kind of used to.
We kind of set that up, though, at the very beginning, saying that he and the Doctor just did not have the same worldview.
Right, so it's like, okay, so he goes and the Doctor is all alone, and he's sort of left, you know, thinking, like, should I have done something? In the last, you know, 2 minutes or so, things got a little goofy again. and we're keeping Stephen still.
Apparently, yes.
Yeah, so...
Now, I hope at some point in the next serial that they'll explain why she needed to call the police.
Yeah.
Because I thought Stephen said there's a couple of policemen who are going to want to use... So, and she said she doesn't have any parents. She has a great aunt who wouldn't care if she saw her again. I'd like to know what was prompting her to run towards the police box so that, you know, we have some idea and what year she was from, so that we can say, okay, well, it's great that we didn't just kidnap somebody out of the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, I thought she said, like, a kid was sick or hurt or something, so... She needed to get a police officer, and then there were other police officers. For some reason, police officers running towards there had Stephen do a 180 on everything so that he would run back into the TARDIS so that they could escape. Just police officers. That is an odd ending, honestly.
Let's leave that till next week.
I guess. So, other than that little part... Which it is good that, to an extent, it is good that happened, because this was a very depressing ending here. Yeah. It's like, oh, here's all the characters you've seen over the past 4 episodes. Here's them dead. Like, and I know, yeah, we're looking at the paintings, you know, and not like them actually being dragged out into the streets and killed. But it was pretty depressing. And then, you know, with Stephen saying like, oh, you don't know if Anne was killed or not. Like, you could have done something, and the Doctor sort of sitting there like, I can't do anything, you know? So it was honestly kind of a depressing ending for the episode.
Yeah.
I don't know, this one was kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, it was an interesting premise, but then it just sort of happens and then they leave.
Well, I think part of the problem is, again, the average citizen of Great Britain would have understood this a lot better than we do, right? The St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre is not really part of our curriculum. It you know, I vaguely remember it that one year that I taught sophomore world history. And again, I have a picture of the Queen Mother coming out of church that morning, and, you know, seeing all of the corpses around, and then just walking by with a smile on her face. You know, I didn't use any of the stuff there, but, you know, again, it's kind of like Troy, though. The Doctor knew that this was going to happen, whether he told him about the horse or not.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like Nero burning Rome. So the difference here is they are personally, truly involved in this, and because it is such a horrible thing, the war between the Greeks and the Trojans, and the Roman Empire burning, or the Roman Republic burning down, Roman Empire, I guess, at that point. But here, this is just such a massive waste of life.
Well,
it's that that again, that contradiction, the term holy war. If there was ever a term that the two words don't go together at all, it would be holy war.
Well, and also, I mean, it also makes it worse because this is also a lot more recent. Troy and burning down Rome. It's that is ancient history.
Yeah.
This, even though this was the 1500s, this was still I feel like this would still be pretty recent.
Yeah.
And especially if people in Great Britain are learning this in their curriculum. So, now it's interesting that they mention with Anne oh well, we could have done something. You don't know if she did survive or not. You sent her back to her aunt's house where there were guards looking for her. And the doctor thinks well, that's the only thing I could have done. Which is interesting because just before we started part 4, I brought up the episode with Pompeii that also has Peter Capaldi playing a different character. In that episode, the doctor accidentally causes Pompeii, basically.
Yeah.
He causes Mount Vesuvius to erupt, and he basically just has to leave, which we also see, because it's the 10th Doctor at that point, which they also reference in The Waters of Mars, which we watched. And so he is just saying, okay, 20,000 people are going to die here, I have to leave. Even if he causes it, he thinks, I just have to walk away. Yeah. And it's his companion, Donna, that says, even if you can't save all 20,000, save someone. So the doctor does listen, and he goes back to that family, Peter Capaldi's family, and he saves the 4 of them and just takes them out with the TARDIS and then eventually drops them off in Rome. Which, granted, the doctor could not have done that with Anne, but he could have just taken her aboard the TARDIS and she would be a new companion. Yeah. So it's interesting that it is sort of the same thing where at this point the doctor is saying, no, there is nothing I can do. I can't alter the flow of history, but he doesn't even think about, even if it doesn't change history, just save one person.
This is going to sound really odd. What was the name of the actress who was playing Anne?
That is a great question. Let's find out.
5:15.
Oh, all right. I was wondering, it would have been an interesting twist if Dodo was played by the actress who had played Anne, and maybe have turned out to be her descendant. But this is Annette Robertson and Jackie Lane, or Jackie somebody there.
Yeah. So, that could have that would have been kind of interesting. So yeah. Now, okay. So this is also one of those. I don't know. This one is also kind of weird because it's okay, well, it like with Troy or Rome, it's oh, the doctor accidentally gets involved and he just has to let history play its course. But the difference here is, so technically the doctor never got involved because he wasn't the abbot. It just so happened that the abbot looked exactly like the doctor, but Stephen was involved because he wasn't able to meet up with the doctor. Yeah. So
did they ever truly explain where the doctor was? How?
I thought they said that he just got held up by curfew, basically. Yeah.
But
so,
and what happened to the old man, Presley, there at the beginning? So
Presley.
Was he there with him, or
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just that was the one nagging thing that happened there. That if he wasn't truly the abbot, then where was he all this time? You can't be held up by the curfew during the daytime, so there's plenty of time that they could have met back up or figured out something.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. Now, I guess, after curfew during the daytime, the doctor would probably go back to the tavern looking for Stephen, but Stephen was only there for a little bit. He went and asked, and when he wasn't there, that's when Stephen went back to the Admiral's house and then eventually to the abbot. But it does seem odd that, because this is a couple days at least, that the Doctor and Stephen never found each other again, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. And yeah, what did happen to Preslin? It's like, it almost sounds like the Doctor, even if he wasn't the Abbot, maybe the Doctor was on some sort of other adventure at just going on at the same time.
Because again, this is one of those places where a single line would have saved all of this if he said, I was pushing him towards the advancement that I knew that he would ultimately make about the study of germs, and finding out of people finding out that there are ways to prevent germs from killing us. So just any small explanation like that would have saved it. Although, like you said, this was just grim from the very start. There was this and the like, for example, the loss of Katerina. It's taking a really kind of dark turn here.
Yeah, which is also odd because I thought we were moving into the Goofy era, and because we had stuff basically from the Time Meddler on, things were getting a little bit more silly, especially with the monk, and we kind of had not even just a return to the normal stuff with Dalek's Master Plan, but that went so dark, but then, kind of got goofy, Christmas episode, whatever. But then it sort of never went back to that darkness that the first 4 parts had. And then it's like all of that was supposed to be in the Dalek's Master Plan just got put into these 4 episodes, or at least this last one,
Yeah.
So it just, I don't know, this one is very, very odd, And then for all of it, because I was kind of thinking okay, this is such a, dark, depressing ending, seeing all these people that are just taken out and murdered, this entire massacre that happens. And it's not just that it's okay, well, this is needlessly dark or anything, but this also sort of has consequences on Stephen and the Doctor, with Stephen leaving. I'm okay, well, that's kind of interesting. To have a companion who just, leaves angrily, okay, well, that's an interesting idea because we've never really seen that with a companion. But to then, in the last 2 minutes, just reverse it all, bringing in Dodo and then Stephen rushing back into the TARDIS, it just seemed very, very odd. So
yeah, and I mean, if nothing else, couldn't the Doctor close the door so that the policeman couldn't get in?
Yeah, so
he wouldn't have to take off.
Which, I mean, I guess that's the only reason that Dodo got in is just because the Doctor left the doors open. Other than that, just close the doors. They can't get in, and when they've gone, she can get out. Stephen can still get out. I don't know. It just seemed kind of odd.
All right. Well, let's move on. We'll obviously see how this all resolves itself next week.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Some of these notes... I didn't take a ton of notes for this episode, but we'll see what I can do here. We had Preslin. He was there for a little bit. It was interesting with him and the Doctor. I kind of wanted a bit more of that, where it's okay, he's a scientist and the Doctor is interested in this stuff. Although we didn't, recognize the name Preslin.
Yeah.
But it was still interesting, and him saying they're creating a thing so that you can see microorganisms better and stuff
And again, just to, there's he said, I think the guy in Germany, and again, I don't know if it was Germany or if it was in the Netherlands, but if I recall, it was Anton van Leeuwenhoek who was the first one to develop the microscope as we understand it. So just a mention of that, just to throw in, I mean, it's name dropping, sure, but it's something that kids would have recognized, because that's stuff that you should have learned in 7th grade science.
Yeah. And we just don't know what happened to him. He hightailed it out of there, apparently. So, let's see. We had the Abbot, so I guess, the Abbot just being the Abbot, he wasn't actually the Doctor. When they started talking about, the Abbot, he's so cruel, and he would go against, scientists and the Huguenots and everything, I don't know why I was kind of thinking of, Judge Claude Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame. I was well, that could be interesting, and then when it's it's the Doctor, it's okay, well, let's see where that goes, and nowhere, but all right. But yeah, I was actually kind of thinking he might be a very interesting villain, especially if you could have had this sort of Frollo character acting off of the Doctor. Like, that could have been an interesting interaction, but yeah.
Yeah, and they kept the Abbott's conversations with Stephen when he finally did meet him just vague enough so that we could not tell if he was in fact the Abbot or if he was the Doctor acting as the Abbot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was nice, but again, it's just it kind of leaves a thread of this tapestry hanging, and you want to tug at it, and if you do, the whole thing will fall apart.
Yeah, because on the one hand, if the Abbot is the Doctor, why is he doing this? Why did he become the Abbot? On the other hand, if the Abbot isn't the Doctor, why does this guy look exactly like the Doctor? Other than, did they just not know what to do with the Doctor this episode? Which seems odd. He's the main character. You could figure out something to do with him. Yeah. But this was definitely... I mean, it basically boils down to this was an episode about Stephen.
Yeah.
Which is very odd.
And maybe that was it. Maybe Stephen, Peter Purvis wanted... I mean, how long has he been on there now? Not an entire year yet, has he? But maybe he said, hey, you write me out. And they said, well, this would be easy because he does disagree with the Doctor and we can...
Yeah.
But again, at the end, he turns back up again. So
right. Well, I don't think... Like, if Peter Purvis leaves, I don't think it would be on, like, bad relations. I think, like, he gets along well with Hartnell because actually I know that... later, when they started doing audios for the First Doctor, Peter Purvis actually voices the First Doctor in those. And I know, like, he's, given his support to, like, Mission to the Unknown, like, the recreation and everything. So I think everything is still, like, good with him. So I don't know. I want to know, like, the thought process for that. Unless maybe the thought process was... And maybe this is conspiracy theory town again, but maybe it's that, well, this is at a point where Hartnell's health is starting to decline, so they sort of reduced his role, even if he's still the Abbot in this episode. Like, he still, like, isn't on screen much. Like, the episode 2, he was really only there for a cameo, and he didn't have that many lines until around episode 4. So it could be that. Maybe they wanted to reduce his role in this episode. Yeah. So who knows? Because I mean, we are getting close. We're getting close to the regeneration now. So
I was thinking that maybe Peter Purvis, like many actors, you do a role and you get famous in it, and then you think to yourself, geez, if I do this for 5-6 more years, or even a couple of years, they're never going to cast me as anything else. So I've had a good year here. I'm on good terms with Hartnell and the rest of the crew, but I don't want to be typecast in the future. So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, maybe. Let's see. Disguises. Nope. He was not disguised as the Abbot. We had the Sea Beggar being the Admiral, who, we said, like, okay, the reason they want him dead is because he wants a war with Spain, and they don't. But was it that, or was it just that he was a Huguenot? Like, they never fully said why they wanted him dead.
And again, that may be something that would be more obvious to a British person than to us, because again, we are very unfamiliar with this entire scenario. Again,
right.
I'm only vaguely remembering that Elizabeth supported the Dutch rebellion against Spain, because I remember there was a Spanish Netherlands, and I think Great Britain was trying to send, I don't think they actually sent soldiers, but they certainly sent money and materiel and things like that to help the Dutch in their revolution, which I think is one of the reasons why Philip of Spain ultimately, after Mary died and Elizabeth became queen, that Philip said, I'm going to go invade England and take the throne there away from Elizabeth. So again, I'm very fuzzy on all of this. So if I'm wrong, definitely correct me in the comments.
Yeah. And again, I wrote down Dr. Dead, but that wasn't the Doctor. I was almost wondering, like, even if that was the Doctor, he had some sort of trick where he was still alive, but nope, that was the actual Abbot. Let's see. And then the actual Massacre, which it does make me wonder if in the original version it was the paintings like we saw here. Because, I mean, we had the paintings for, like, the beginning of the end, like they bookmark or bookend each episode, which is kind of odd because it's so clearly a painting, but that's sort of the shot they start and end with. But then just the paintings at the end, and you just sort of hear the screaming and the conflict in the background. So I'm curious if that's actually how they did it in the original version.
I would suspect they would have to do something like that because, again, showing, actual people, even if you're just, like Alfred Hitchcock showing the sword going up and then coming down and not seeing anybody actually bleeding or falling down or anything, that would still be pretty grim stuff.
Yeah, like, because this is still, like, a show for kids and stuff like that, and it's like, this is probably the most brutal thing we've seen, other than just Katarina's body floating around in space.
For example, the burning of Troy, we didn't really see a huge amount of destruction there. Just people running and Peter and Katarina trying to get back to the TARDIS and that sort of thing.
Right. So, yeah, I would have to assume it would be just the paintings, but even still, that's a very dark thing to put into here,
And what's really strange is those were very two-dimensional kind of paintings. And by this point, I mean, we're in the definitely the late Italian Renaissance, and we should be in the middle of the French Renaissance. I would think there would have been, some better, more three-dimensional type stuff, but again, maybe that was too realistic, and they just wanted to do, well, of course, what they showed people holding up heads and, guys on the ground being hacked, and so, I don't know.
And of course, they made sure that every time they showed a new image, they superimposed that character. So, it's like, oh, yep, that's his head being removed from his body. Good night, kids. I almost would assume then that the ending with Dodo and bringing Steven back, like, I almost wonder if that's a studio note. Like, hey, you have to put in something. You can't have this such an incredibly dark ending,
That could be,
Yeah. You wrote down
the
Edict of Nantes.
Edict of Nantes. Because, again, if I recall correctly, Henry of Navarre does survive. He does become King of France, married to the king's sister. And if I recall correctly, the Edict of Nantes, he basically says, because of what happened with the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre and everything else, he issues basically a law of toleration, where he says, we will no longer allow anyone to be persecuted because of their faith. All right? The Catholics will not molest the Protestants will not molest the Catholics, and basically, very much like Elizabeth did with her law, basically a law of religious freedom, which, of course, right at this time is what will ultimately cause the Massachusetts Bay Colony and all those other American colonies to put their religious freedoms into their constitutions, and then ultimately the American Constitution, the First Amendment, says you shall not establish a national religion, nor shall you interfere with the private exercise of religion. So that, again, I'm assuming the average English child would have known that this would have turned out okay. But again, one line from the Doctor to say, Peter, you don't understand. I know you're from a certain time period and you don't know this history well, but despite what happened, what you just saw happened, it does turn out better. It does lead to religious tolerance amongst the French and the English and several other places, ultimately in the United States.
Yeah.
So, but again, one line would have corrected that.
Yeah, that's true. Which, by the way, when they mentioned Queen Elizabeth I, I was sort of sitting here thinking, it's like, I wonder if this is before or after she married the Doctor in The Day of the Doctor.
Well, was she a young Elizabeth or an older Elizabeth?
She was young.
She was young. All right. So then,
in that episode.
Then theoretically, the Doctor would have married her because, again, this is 1570 something. The Spanish Armada's not till 1588, and then she died in 1603. So she would have been very young.
Yeah. So, which now I'm realizing how many times the Doctor has interacted with like this specific like time frame, because he does, like we see in The Day of the Doctor, he marries Queen Elizabeth I with the War Doctor and the 11th Doctor as his best men, basically. And then the First Doctor is here at this time. There's also another point where the 10th Doctor goes back and meets Shakespeare, which is a whole nother episode. So
we'll get there in about 5 years.
Yeah. Which we also saw the First Doctor sing Shakespeare on the Time television, whatever, in The Chase. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll get to the 10th Doctor's era in like 5 years or so. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We're not even done with the First Doctor yet.
Yeah.
So,
but we're coming up probably in the next 2 months here.
Yeah,
because that's 8 weeks or so.
It's about 5 or 6 episodes from now, I think. Yeah. So, let's see. I mean, I guess that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot else we can talk about, which honestly makes sense because while yes, that ending was big and it was dark and it was an interesting conflict between the Doctor and Steven, and then that ending was interesting and kind of goofy, but throughout the rest of it, there were so many moments where we were just sitting here not talking. Like yesterday I was editing the last video for the Daleks Master Plan, and evidently we talked so much that I had to really try to cut it down so that we only had so much footage in there. And I was like, oh man, I didn't realize we talked so much in those last episodes. It's like here, it's like, oh, well, this is going to be a very easy edit. Every 10 minutes we might say something, you know? So
again, it was so much action happening with no dialogue. And when you're doing recreations like this, these recons, that's very tough to comment on because it's...
Yeah, it's very tricky. I don't necessarily blame the recon for that because, I mean, the episode would still be like that, but... it'd at least be a bit more visually interesting with the original version. So, next time, Lord knows what we're doing next time. We'll still have...
didn't we say it's the Ark?
The Ark, yes. We will still have Steven. We do have our new companion that we've accidentally kidnapped.
Now, Dorothea, couldn't remember... Chatterley?
I could have sworn they said Chaplin.
Oh, I don't know. But it seemed like the Doctor or Peter, one of them recognized the name.
Yeah.
Which struck me as odd. So again, either we didn't hear it correctly or we'll need to wait until next week to find out exactly what was happening. Yeah. Because it may be that she is a historical person, like Amelia Earhart or somebody who disappeared. And they've accidentally, like they did with the Marie Celeste, they've gone back in history and accidentally caused something, like the disappearance of Amelia Earhart.
That would be hilarious if Amelia Earhart was a companion for a while. But yeah. So, and also next time, it will be a 100% complete serial.
Oh, good.
Which will be a nice change of pace. So, I guess that's pretty much it. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
All right. Then, with all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit the notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.